What's up, gang? Kawaii50 here to talk more FGO, and we're talking about a servant today that I have simultaneously seen nowhere and seen immediately grailed and max skilled and all that. So I kinda don't really know what to make of this character. That character, of course, the new 5-star rider, Europa. We're going to be going over all aspects of Europa's kit, including craft essences, command codes, and allies, in order to try and make her a shining star of your team. And if this video helps you out, be sure to go ahead, like, and subscribe. And if you really know how popular Europa is in the fandom, please let me know down below as well, because I have no idea. Europa's deck comes outfitted with 1 quick, 2 arts, and 2 buster cards, with an AoE Buster Noble Phantasm. Her max HP of 12,571 is fine, as is her max attack of 11,737. Her NP per hit is a solid 0.58, and she has 3 hits on her 2 arts cards, so NP per hit really shouldn't be a big issue. And with her rider class, she of course has the class's token high star weight. Her star weight's very, very high at a 205, meaning all those stars are likely going to flow directly to Europa. Europa's first skill is Innocent Princess rank B. This gives her 3 instances of invincibility. That means 3 attacks, she's not going to get hit, unless the enemy has Pierce Invincibility, that is. It also increases her own debuff resist by 50 to 100%, and this also lasts for 3 potential debuffs. There is no specific hang time on this skill. It just lasts for 3 instances, so this skill conceivably can cool down completely, and then Europa will be able to immediately apply it for another 3 instances of those 2 boons, which can be very, very nice. It is on a relatively short 6-turn cooldown, so I'm going to recommend you go ahead and max this skill second just because of the hang time on that invincibility, and to reduce any sort of margin of error that would come from not having that reduced cooldown. It is a sweet quality of life bonus. Europa's second skill is Grace of the King of Gods, rank A+. This increases her arts card and buster card effectiveness by 20 to 30% for 3 turns, and also grants her a 20 to 30% increase to her own Noble Phantasm gauge. This is one of the most disappointing part of Europa's kit to veteran players. It's not that the skill itself is bad by any means. A 20 to 30% boost to Arts and Buster is very, very good. But when it comes to farming, a bunch of players really covet that 50% NP charge. And unfortunately, Europa does not have that. I still highly recommend you max this skill first because it is her primary damage steroid and primary way to gain Noble Phantasm. It just needs a little bit more to be truly beloved. Europa's final skill is the King of Gods White Bull, rank C. This has a 60% chance to charm everyone for 1 turn. It also decreases their defense and crit rate for 3 turns by 10 to 20%. I do quite like party defense reduction, especially when the servant has an AoE Noble Phantasm like Europa. And crit rate, I'm sure you've heard me say before, is a very underrated debuff. I quite like it, keeping my servants from being the victims of any very unlucky crits. Be that as it may, I still recommend you max this skill last, solely because the other 2 skills are just so much more important to Europa's kit. When it comes to append skills, Europa's most important is easily mana loading. This allows her to begin a battle with a 10 to 20% charge on her NP gauge. This easily can make up for the fact that her second skill only charges 30%. If you've got a 50% NP charge craft essence on her, well, that's going to be an instant turn 1 Noble Phantasm with some added benefits. And now we come to Europa's Noble Phantasm, which I am not even going to attempt to pronounce because I know I will butcher it. What you need to know, however, is this is an AoE Noble Phantasm that will increase Europa's defense by 50% for 1 turn. It also has a great overcharge effect that increases her buster card effectiveness by 20 to 40% for 1 turn, and it activates before damage is dealt. As far as Noble Phantasms go, this is pretty bog standard in the game when it comes to an AoE Buster Noble Phantasm. There really isn't anything super outstanding about it, but by the same token, there's nothing really bad I can say about it. It's a Buster Noble Phantasm. If you like Buster AoE Noble Phantasms, you'll like Europa's. If not, you won't. So who do we pair Europa with in order to maximize her full effectiveness? Well, by pure virtue of her noble phantasm, we're going to want to give her a Buster supporter. Of course, if you're on NA right now, Merlin is your only option, but if you're on JP Masters will likely want to pair her with Koyanskaya of Light. Koyanskaya is very, very important when it comes to AoE Buster farming, and with Europa being an AoE Buster servant, the same basically applies here. But of course, there are other allies you can pair with your Europa, starting with some freebie options. Let's of course first mention William Shakespeare, who has the ability to grant Europa a solid 20 to 40% Buster card boost for one turn. Most importantly though, I would say is his King's Men skill, which allows him to give an ally 20% NP gauge, making up for that 20% that a lot of masters desperately wish Europa had. Of course, for prolonged fights, you're probably going to want to bring along Leonidas. Leonidas, of course, being an incredible tank, being able to taunt enemies and use multiple instances of guts to survive all of his opponents. It is pretty fantastic. On top of that, he can also grant Europa a Buster card effectiveness boost. So this is a nice way for you to go ahead and stall, so you don't really have to rely on that invincibility as much. Though, she does, remember, have that invincibility boost and that defense boost from her noble Phantasm. Masters haven't met this man yet, in servant form at least, but Oda Nobukatsu can actually be a pretty good low rarity pick. Yes, he does work primarily best with Nobunaga servants. However, that doesn't mean his benefits are only limited to Nobunaga servants. Nobukatsu does have the ability to decrease the Buster resist of a single enemy by 20 to 30% for 3 turns, as well as gain critical stars and increase his allies' critical strength. With Europa being a rider class servant and all those stars flowing to her, any sort of critical damage boost is going to be welcome. Summer Raiko also remains a stellar pick that I wish I had, because of her second 2 skills. Cast Iron Yo-Yo granting Buster card effectiveness for 3 turns and offering a complete debuff cleanse, which is great because Europa only has a debuff resist, not an immunity and not a cleanse. Her other skill, Summer Catastrophe, also grants a party-wide attack boost and party-wide crit star drop rate boost. And finally, I definitely want to mention Oberon. Oberon is able to provide Europa with massive NP strength boosts as well as NP gauge steroids, 2 things she sorely needs. He also has a fantastic boon in the form of his End of the Dream skill. This will massively increase Europa's Buster card effectiveness and NP strength at the cost of, well, once she fires that Noble Phantasm, she will be useless for the rest of the fight, and there's absolutely nothing you can do to stop it. If you're looking to make Europa into a very reliable final wave clearer, then make sure you go ahead and stick Oberon on your team and watch the fireworks. Servants likely will not survive. When it comes to Europa's craft essences, Kaleidoscope is the absolute victor. There is just no way you can beat a 80 to 100% starting NP charge for a servant with an AoE farming design Noble Phantasm. But don't fret if you are a new player, because Dragon's Meridian offers a very acceptable substitute, granting a 30 to 50% starting NP gauge. If you're a freebie player, combine a maxed Europa charge skill with Dragon's Meridian and Shakespeare's 3rd skill, well, you've got a turn 1 Noble Phantasm right there. See, there totally is a way to get it done. Veteran masters that have aerial drive would do well to put this on Europa, granting her a Buster card effectiveness, NP strength boost, and that coveted 30 to 50% starting NP gauge. And finally, I do definitely want to mention the beloved First Sunrise, granting Buster card effectiveness as well as that starting NP gauge too. This boost is far stronger than aerial drives, and you'll be thankful if you have this CE sitting in your bank. And of course, the command codes. A couple of them deserve special mention when it comes to Europa. She does have the ability to charm, so that means that the Spear of Love, Action, and Wisdom is going to be a great pick for her. This grants her 2 critical stars whenever she attacks with the card, and also increases the damage against enemies that are charmed by 20%. Definitely throw this on your highest damaging card. Speaking of high damaging cards, Europa can also benefit from critical damage on those. So something like Heavenly Child of Karama, really any critical damage command code is going to be very helpful. If you're looking for a great budget option, you can just go ahead and throw a bunch of instances of Code Burst on her, and since she's a rider, that'll probably get you by just fine. Of course, as I said before, Europa has a debuff resist, but not a debuff cleanse or debuff immunity. So something like White Vessel's Command Seal or the more free option Code Cure is going to be very, very helpful if she gets some pesky debuffs on her. And with any farming servant, we need to mention Da Vinci-chan. This increases the NP damage of a servant as this command code is used. You have to use this command code's card before the damage is dealt, but the damage trade-off always ends up being worth it. Overall, gang, I've got to say, Europa is good. She is a very solid kit, but this is also her biggest strength as well as her biggest weakness. See, she's also unfortunately a rider, and the rider class is popularized by some very, very powerful servants that do a lot of the similar things she does. To give you a quick rundown, riders have Francis Drake. Riders have Iskandar, both of these being AoE buster servants. Riders have Ivan the Terrible, another AoE buster servant. There are so many servants in the rider class that do what she does. And if you're looking for quick servants, well, Achilles is also right there. Newer masters that end up summoning Europa will be very, very pleased, and you will find a very powerful servant that will be able to carry you through a lot of content. Seriously, if Europa is your first 5-star rider, you have absolutely nothing to worry about. She will be incredibly helpful. However, if you are a veteran player, it is very likely that someone in your Chaldea does what Europa does already. Whether or not you think it's still worth summoning her, I'm going to leave that up to you. Anyways, gang, that's my thoughts on Europa, and of course I want to know your thoughts on her as well, so go ahead and let me know down in the comments section below. If you want to talk more Fate Grand Order, either about Europa or really anyone else in the game, my Discord server is of course always open. I want to give a big thanks to the patrons on Patreon, the subscribers and followers over on Twitch, and of course you subscribers here on YouTube for giving me this continued support. I really, really appreciate it. Y'all are honestly great. But anyways, gang, this is Kawaii50. I hope you all have a phenomenal day, and I'll see you all in the next video.